Zara Washington stands in the jetway, her phone to her ear, watching flight attendants and passengers stare in disbelief as half the first-class cabin suddenly empties. "It's done," she says into the phone. "And this airline will never forget the day they chose the wrong black woman to disrespect." Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next in this shocking confrontation that changed an entire airline's policies overnight. The morning had started like any other for Zara Washington. She woke up at 5 a.m., completed her workout routine, and reviewed the quarterly reports before most people had even poured their first cup of coffee. At 38, Zara had built next-gen technologies from a startup operating out of her garage into a tech powerhouse valued at $1.2 billion. Today, she was scheduled to deliver the keynote address at the Future of Tech conference in San Francisco, where industry leaders would gather to hear her insights on artificial intelligence ethics. Zara stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting the lapel of her tailored navy suit. Her natural hair was styled in a sophisticated updo that had taken years to feel confident wearing in professional settings. She wore minimal jewelry, just diamond stud earrings and her grandmother's watch, elegant yet understated. Appearances mattered in her world, especially as a black woman in the overwhelmingly white and male tech industry. "Ms. Washington, the car is here," called her assistant, Malcolm, from downstairs. "Coming," she replied, grabbing her carry-on luggage. As she descended the stairs of her Atlanta home, her phone buzzed with an emergency notification. The board was requesting an immediate meeting before her flight. Something about a potential security breach in their newest software. She sighed, knowing this would cut her airport arrival time dangerously close. The emergency board meeting stretched longer than anticipated. What should have been a 15-minute briefing turned into a 45-minute debate about security protocols. By the time the meeting concluded, Zara was already calculating whether she would make her flight. "Malcolm, tell the driver to take the expressway, even with traffic. We're cutting it too close," she instructed, gathering her materials. "Already done. If we hit all greens, you should make it just as they're boarding first class," Malcolm replied, ever efficient. The car wove through Atlanta traffic with impressive skill, but Zara's anxiety grew with each passing minute. She mentally rehearsed her keynote address, a presentation she had prepared meticulously but now wouldn't have time to review before delivery. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from conference organizers confirming her arrival details. When they finally pulled up to the terminal, Zara moved with practiced efficiency. "Thank you," she said to the driver, already halfway out the door. "Malcolm, I'll call when I land." She rushed through the airport, bypassing the check-in desk thanks to her digital boarding pass. The security line for priority passengers moved quickly, but Zara could still hear the final boarding announcement for her flight as she slipped her shoes back on and gathered her belongings. By the time she reached gate A23, the regular boarding groups had already been called. The gate agent, a young woman whose name tag read, Brittany, looked up with slight annoyance at Zara's rushed approach. "I'm sorry, we're about to close the gate," Brittany said, barely glancing at Zara. "I have a first-class ticket," Zara explained, catching her breath and presenting her digital boarding pass. Brittany's eyes narrowed slightly as she examined the boarding pass, then looked up at Zara. There was a moment, a brief, familiar moment that Zara had experienced countless times, where Brittany's expression shifted from annoyance to surprise, then to something resembling suspicion. "May I see your ID, please?" Brittany asked, her tone notably different from the warm farewells she had been offering to previous passengers. Zara provided her driver's license without comment, though the familiar burn of indignation rose in her chest. She was used to this, the subtle questioning of whether she belonged in first class, the implicit suggestion that her boarding pass might not really be hers. After scrutinizing the ID longer than necessary, Brittany reluctantly scanned her boarding pass. Cutting it close, she remarked, not quite meeting Zara's eyes as she returned the ID. Zara took a deep breath as she walked down the jetway. She was used to these microaggressions, but they never stopped being exhausting. Mentally, she shifted gears, focusing on her speech. The conference would have over 2,000 attendees, including the tech industry's biggest names. Her presentation needed to be flawless. As she rehearsed her opening lines, Zara reminded herself of what was at stake. NextGen's newest security protocol could revolutionize data protection, and this presentation would be her platform to announce it to the world. After years of being underestimated and overlooked, she had built something groundbreaking. Nothing, not even casual airport discrimination, could diminish that achievement. Zara entered the plane with a composed smile, putting the gate incident behind her. The first flight attendant, a tall man with a kind face whose name tag read, Keith, greeted her warmly. "Welcome aboard," Keith said, checking her boarding pass. "Right this way to 2A. You're in the window seat." Zara nodded appreciatively. This was how things should be, professional, courteous, without the shadow of suspicion. She made her way down the narrow aisle of the first-class cabin, locating row 2. A middle-aged white woman with expensively highlighted blonde hair and a designer handbag was already seated in 2B, the aisle seat. "Excuse me," Zara said with a practiced smile. "I'm in the window seat." The woman, who appeared to be in her 50s, looked up from her phone. Her expression immediately changed. She frowned, her eyes quickly scanning Zara from head to toe. Then, instead of moving to allow Zara access, she clutched her purse closer to her chest. "Are you sure you're in the right section?" the woman asked, her voice just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Zara maintained her composure. "Yes, 2A. The window seat in this row." The woman didn't budge. "I think there must be some mistake. I specifically requested no one sitting next to me." She looked around as if seeking an ally among the other passengers. "There's no mistake," Zara replied calmly, though she could feel her heart rate increasing. "My boarding pass clearly says 2A. By now, several other passengers were watching the interaction. The woman, whom Zara would later learn was named Karen Maxwell, raised her hand to summon a flight attendant while still refusing to move. "Excuse me," Karen called out. "I need some assistance here." A different flight attendant approached, Brittany from the gate. Her eyes darted between Karen and Zara, quickly assessing the situation. "What seems to be the problem?" Brittany asked, addressing Karen directly while barely acknowledging Zara's presence. "I don't feel comfortable with this arrangement," Karen said, gesturing vaguely toward Zara. "I specifically booked an aisle seat hoping for some space, and I don't feel comfortable having someone sitting so close." Zara remained outwardly calm, but internally, she was seething. The implication was clear: Karen didn't want to sit next to a black woman. What made it worse was that Brittany seemed to be taking Karen's side. "I understand your concern," Brittany said to Karen sympathetically before turning to Zara with a noticeably cooler demeanor. "Perhaps you wouldn't mind taking another seat? We might be able to find you something in the main cabin if that would help resolve this situation." The suggestion that Zara should be the one to move, to give up her first-class seat and move to economy, simply because a white passenger didn't feel comfortable, was the last straw. She'd experienced this kind of discrimination before, but never so blatantly, and never with airline staff enabling it. Around them, the tension in the cabin was palpable. A few passengers looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and avoiding eye contact. Others seemed annoyingly unsurprised, as if this sort of thing happened all the time. Not one person spoke up. Karen, apparently emboldened by the flight attendant's support, leaned toward another white passenger seated across the aisle. "I just don't feel safe," she whispered, though intentionally loud enough for Zara to hear. "You never know these days." The casual racism of the comment, paired with the flight attendant's complicity, hit Zara like a physical blow. She'd spent her entire career fighting against such prejudices, proving over and over that she belonged in spaces where people like Karen didn't think she should be. In that moment, Zara made a decision. She would not yell. She would not create a scene. She would not give anyone the satisfaction of labeling her as angry or difficult. Instead, she would use the power she had spent years accumulating. Without another word to either Karen or Brittany, Zara pulled out her phone. The flight attendant began to protest. "Ma'am, we're preparing for departure. Cell phones need to be in airplane mode." Zara looked directly at Brittany, her gaze unflinching. "I'll just be a moment." Her tone made it clear this wasn't a request. She scrolled through her contacts, found the number she was looking for, and pressed call. "Richard?" "It's Zara Washington," she said when the call connected. "Yes, from NextGen. I'm currently on your flight 1387 to San Francisco, and we need to talk. Now." Growing up in the working-class neighborhood of Lakewood Heights in Atlanta, Zara Washington had learned early about the realities of being black in America. Her father, James Washington, worked double shifts as a hospital orderly to provide for the family, while her mother, Elaine, taught at the local elementary school. Their modest home was filled with books instead of expensive toys, and dinner conversations often centered around current events and history rather than idle gossip. "Education is the one thing they can never take away from you," her mother would say as she checked Zara's homework each night. "You'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far, but that's just the way it is for now. One day, you'll help change that." Zara had taken those words to heart. When she was 9, her parents scraped together enough money to move to a better school district, stretching their finances to the breaking point. James took on a third job on weekends, and Elaine tutored after school hours. Their sacrifice was for one purpose: to give their daughter access to opportunities they never had. At her new school, Zara was one of only 3 black students in her grade. The microaggression started immediately. "You speak so well," teachers would comment with surprise. "Is your hair real?" classmates would ask, sometimes reaching out to touch without permission. When she consistently earned the highest grades in advanced math classes, a teacher pulled her aside to ask if she was getting outside help or, somehow, accessing the answer keys. The accusation of cheating was never directly stated but heavily implied. Rather than breaking her spirit, these experiences hardened Zara's resolve. She graduated as valedictorian and earned a full scholarship to Georgia Tech, where she double-majored in computer science and business administration. College brought its own challenges. In group projects, her ideas were often ignored until a white male classmate repeated them. Professors would mix her up with the only other black woman in the class, despite them looking nothing alike. At career fairs, recruiters would sometimes assume she was looking for administrative positions rather than technical roles. After graduating summa cum laude, Zara joined a mid-sized tech firm as a junior developer. Her talent was undeniable, and she quickly established herself as an innovative problem solver. 3 years in, when a senior developer position opened up, Zara was passed over in favor of a less experienced white colleague who played golf with the CTO. "We just think he's a better culture fit," her manager had explained awkwardly when Zara asked for feedback. "Maybe next time." That night, sitting in her apartment surrounded by industry certifications and awards, Zara made a promise to herself. She would never again put her career in someone else's hands. Within a month, she had quit her job and started working on what would eventually become NextGen Technologies. The early days were brutal. Working out of her converted garage, living on savings and the occasional consulting gig, Zara developed her first security algorithm. When she tried to secure funding, venture capitalists would listen politely before declining. One particularly memorable rejection came after a pitch where the investor spent more time asking about her long-term family plans than her business model. Her breakthrough came when she won a prestigious tech competition judged blindly. The judges didn't see the developers, only their code. The prize money and attention allowed her to secure her first real investment, and NextGen Technologies was officially born. Even as the company grew from 3 employees to 30, then 300, the discrimination continued in more subtle forms. At industry conferences, people would assume she was someone's assistant rather than the CEO. Potential clients would ask to speak to the person in charge when she was standing right in front of them. Security guards would stop her in her own building while white visitors walked past unchallenged. Through it all, Zara maintained her composure publicly while channeling her frustration into building a company that would change the tech landscape. She implemented strict diversity hiring practices at NextGen and created mentorship programs for underrepresented groups in tech. She also established a company culture where discriminatory behavior was met with zero tolerance, regardless of how valuable the employee might otherwise be. 6 months ago, NextGen had signed a groundbreaking partnership with 3 major airlines, including the one she was currently sitting in, to revolutionize their booking systems and implement state-of-the-art security protocols. The contract was worth over $50 million and had been Zara's largest deal to date. Richard Thompson, the airline's CEO, had personally courted the partnership, praising Zara's innovation and leadership in multiple press releases. As Zara sat on the plane, phone to her ear, these memories flashed through her mind. She thought about her parents, who had sacrificed so much for her to be in this position. She thought about every slight, every dismissal, every time she had smiled politely and moved on for the sake of professionalism or peace. Not today. Today, she would use the power she had earned to ensure there were consequences. Not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been made to feel they didn't belong because of the color of their skin. "Richard," she said into the phone, her voice steady and clear. "We have a situation that requires your immediate attention." "Richard, your airline has a serious problem," Zara continued, her voice measured but firm. "I'm sitting in first class on flight 1387, where one of your passengers has refused to sit next to me because of my race, and your flight attendant suggested that I should move to accommodate this blatant discrimination." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "Zara, I'm deeply sorry to hear this. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" As Zara concisely recounted the incident, she noticed the head flight attendant, a man with silver-streaked hair and a name tag reading, Troy, approaching with a concerned expression. Behind him, several passengers were watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to end your call. We're preparing for departure," Troy said, his tone authoritative but not unkind. Zara covered the mouthpiece. "I'm speaking with Richard Thompson, your CEO. I suggest you wait a moment." Troy's expression shifted from mild annoyance to uncertainty. "I'm sorry, but I can't verify that, and we need to." "Verify it?" Zara interrupted, removing her hand from the mouthpiece. "Richard, your head flight attendant Troy doesn't believe I'm speaking with you. Would you mind clarifying?" She held the phone out, and though the other passengers couldn't hear what was said, Troy's face paled considerably as he listened. He handed the phone back to Zara with a noticeably shaken demeanor. "My apologies, Ms. Washington. What can I do to help resolve this situation?" Troy asked, suddenly deferential. "I'd like to speak with the captain, please," Zara replied calmly. While Troy went to fetch the captain, Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat, still refusing to move to allow Zara access to her assigned space. "This is ridiculous," Karen muttered loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "I just expressed a preference, and now she's making a federal case out of it." A middle-aged man across the aisle leaned forward. "Actually, refusing to sit next to someone because of their race is illegal discrimination, not of preference." Karen flushed red. "I never said anything about race." "You're putting words in my mouth." "You said you didn't feel safe sitting next to her," countered a younger woman from the row behind. "What exactly did you mean by that if not her race?" The captain appeared in the cabin, a tall man with a commanding presence. His name badge identified him as Captain Wilson. Troy whispered in his ear, and the captain's eyes immediately found Zara. "Ms. Washington, I understand there's been an incident. May I see your identification, please?" Zara handed over her ID and business card. The captain studied them, recognition dawning in his eyes as he connected her name with the recent partnership announcement that had been circulated throughout the company. "Ms. Washington, I apologize for the situation. I wasn't aware we had the CEO of NextGen Technologies on board today. If you'll give me a moment, I need to make a call." As Captain Wilson stepped away to use the cockpit phone, the atmosphere in the cabin grew increasingly tense. Brittany, the gate agent who was now serving as a flight attendant, stood near the galley, her face pale as she realized the magnitude of her error. Karen, still indignant but now visibly nervous, turned to another passenger. "This is harassment. I'm being attacked for having a simple preference about seating." "Is it really a simple preference, when you clutch your purse tighter and say you don't feel safe?" replied an elderly black woman seated across the aisle. "Some of us have experienced that simple preference our entire lives, dear." The cabin had divided itself into clear factions, those who understood what was happening and supported Zara, and those who appeared uncomfortable but unwilling to acknowledge the discrimination that had taken place. Captain Wilson returned a few minutes later, his expression grave. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been informed that we'll experience a slight delay due to some customer service issues that need resolution before departure. We appreciate your patience." The intercom crackled to life. "Troy, please come to the main door," a voice announced. As Troy hurried to the front of the plane, Zara remained seated, outwardly calm but internally processing the waves of emotion, anger at the initial discrimination, satisfaction that action was being taken, and a deep fatigue from having to deal with yet another incident in a lifetime of similar experiences. What do you think about Zara's response? If you believe she was right to stand her ground and call the CEO, comment 1 below. If you think she overreacted, comment 2. I'd love to hear your perspective on how you would handle this situation. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up to discrimination. And now, I have to ask, how do you think the airline is going to respond to this situation? Will they side with Karen to avoid a scene, or will Zara's position as a powerful CEO influence their decision? Let's find out what happens next. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin grew increasingly tense as the minutes ticked by. Passengers checked their watches and phones, murmuring about connection times and delayed arrivals. Karen Maxwell shifted uncomfortably in her seat, occasionally glancing toward the front of the plane where Troy had disappeared. Zara sat perfectly still, her posture impeccable, her expression neutral. Years in boardrooms facing hostile negotiations had taught her the power of stillness. While chaos swirled around her, she would be the eye of the storm, calm, focused, and ultimately, the force directing which way the winds would blow. 10 minutes after Captain Wilson's announcement, the main cabin door reopened. Troy returned, accompanied by 2 individuals who were clearly not part of the regular flight crew. A man and a woman, both in crisp business suits, entered the cabin with purposeful strides. The woman carried a tablet, while the man surveyed the cabin with a practiced eye. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption," the man announced in a clear voice that commanded attention. "I'm David Mercer, Vice President of Customer Experience, and this is Lisa Chen, our Director of Passenger Relations." A ripple of surprise passed through the cabin. It was highly unusual for airline executives to board a plane, especially one that was supposed to have departed already. David approached Zara first, extending his hand. "Ms. Washington, I cannot express how deeply sorry we are for the experience you've had today. Mr. Thompson has briefed us on the situation, and we're here to resolve it immediately." Zara accepted his handshake with a single nod. "I appreciate your prompt response, Mr. Mercer. We have a premium direct flight to San Francisco departing in just under an hour," Lisa explained, consulting her tablet. "We've already transferred your luggage and upgraded you to our premier suite service. A car is waiting to take you to the gate when you're ready." "That's very considerate," Zara replied. "And what about the broader issue of discrimination on your airline?" David cleared his throat, aware that every passenger was listening intently. "Ms. Washington, Mr. Thompson has initiated an immediate review of our training protocols and policies regarding discriminatory incidents. He would like to discuss this with you personally in San Francisco, if you're willing." Zara considered this for a moment before nodding her agreement. "I think that would be productive." Having addressed Zara, David turned to address the entire cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we've discovered that this flight has been overbooked. We need to reaccommodate several passengers before we can depart. A collective groan rose from the cabin. I assure you, we will provide compensation for any inconvenience, Lisa added quickly. However, we do need to begin the reaccommodation process immediately. Lisa approached Karen's seat, tablet in hand. Ms. Maxwell, I need to speak with you regarding your seating arrangement. Karen straightened, a smug expression crossing her face. Yes, I was just telling the flight attendant that I'm uncomfortable with my current seating assignment. I'm glad someone is finally addressing this. Indeed, Lisa replied, her professional smile never wavering. We've determined that we need to reaccommodate you on a different flight. Karen's expression froze. Excuse me? Due to overbooking, we need to move some passengers to alternative flights. You've been selected for reaccommodation, Lisa explained. That's absurd. I'm a platinum member. I've been flying this airline for 15 years. Karen's voice rose sharply. You can't just remove me from a flight I've paid for. Actually, according to our terms of service, we can, David interjected smoothly. However, we'll be providing a full refund along with additional compensation for your inconvenience. Karen's face flushed crimson. This is about her, isn't it? She hissed, gesturing toward Zara. She's throwing her weight around and you're caving to pressure. Ms. Maxwell, this is about our airline's zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior, David replied, his voice now noticeably cooler. We've received reports from multiple sources about your refusal to sit next to another passenger based on her race, which violates both our policies and federal law. I never said anything about race. Karen protested, looking around for support. This is defamation. I'll sue. We have witnesses who heard you express concerns about your safety while clutching your purse, despite being seated next to a well-dressed business professional, Lisa countered. Our flight attendants also reported your comments. Now, we can continue this discussion in the terminal, or we can involve airport security. The choice is yours. The reality of her situation finally seemed to dawn on Karen. She gathered her belongings with jerky, angry movements. This is outrageous. I'm calling my lawyer the minute I get off this plane. As Karen stood to exit, a man in the row behind her also rose. If she's being removed, I want to get off too. This is ridiculous. Me too, called another woman. You can't treat paying customers this way. 3 more first-class passengers, all appearing to be friends or associates of Karen's, also demanded to be let off the plane in solidarity. The executives accommodated them without protest, promising the same compensation package. As this group of disgruntled passengers made their way toward the exit, Brittany moved to follow them, apparently having been instructed to accompany them to customer service. One more thing, David announced, turning to Zara. Ms. Washington, we've arranged for one of our most experienced flight attendants to replace Brittany on this flight. Keith will be taking over her duties for the remainder of the journey. Keith, the flight attendant who had initially welcomed Zara aboard with genuine warmth, stepped forward with a professional nod. The exodus of Karen, her supporters, and Brittany created a strange calm in the first-class cabin. The remaining passengers watched in stunned silence as Zara was escorted from the plane by the executives, who continued to apologize profusely for her experience. As she walked down the jetway, Zara overheard David speaking quietly into his phone. Yes, sir. Ms. Maxwell has been added to the no-fly list, effective immediately. The incident report is being finalized now. For the first time since boarding the plane, Zara allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The message had been sent. In 2023, corporations could no longer afford to tolerate or enable racial discrimination, even from their most privileged customers. The rules were changing, slowly but surely. And today, she had helped move that needle just a little bit further. The premium direct flight to San Francisco provided Zara with exactly what she needed: peace, exceptional service, and time to process what had happened. Seated in the airline's exclusive premier suite, a private space with a fully reclining seat, personal entertainment system, and dedicated flight attendant, Zara finally allowed herself to decompress. Keith, who had been reassigned to this flight specifically to serve the premium cabin, approached with a glass of sparkling water. "Ms. Washington, is there anything else I can get for you before takeoff?" "No, thank you, Keith. This is perfect," she replied. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Zara felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she saw a young black woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, leaning slightly over from the adjacent suite. "Excuse me," the young woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" Zara asked, though she suspected she knew. "For not letting it slide." The young woman's eyes were earnest, almost shining. "I work in tech too, junior developer at Meshworks. I've sat through so many meetings where I was the only black person in the room, watched them give my ideas to someone else, been mistaken for administrative staff, you know how it is." Zara nodded. She did know, all too well. "Watching you stand your ground back there," the young woman continued, "it reminded me that we don't always have to smile and take it. That there can be consequences." "What's your name?" Zara asked. "Aisha. Aisha Robinson." "Well, Aisha Robinson, keep developing, keep innovating, and definitely keep standing your ground. The industry needs your voice." Zara reached into her handbag and extracted a business card, handing it to the surprised young woman. "And if Meshworks doesn't appreciate that voice, NextGen is always looking for talent." Aisha's eyes widened as she accepted the card. "Thank you. Really." As the plane accelerated down the runway, Zara noticed subtle interactions throughout the premium cabin, nods of acknowledgement from other passengers of color, small gestures of solidarity. The incident had clearly resonated beyond those directly involved. Once they reached cruising altitude, Zara opened her laptop to review her keynote presentation, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the confrontation. She had spent years building her company and her reputation precisely so she could have the power to challenge such discrimination, not just for herself but for others who lacked her platform. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Malcolm, her assistant. "Just got word that Karen Maxwell has been permanently banned from flying with the airline. Your call to Richard created quite the stir at headquarters. Well done, boss." Zara allowed herself a small smile. The message reminded her of something her mother used to say, "Justice isn't always about changing minds. Sometimes, it's about changing consequences." Another message appeared on her screen, this one from her PR director, "Incident on flight trending on social media. Several passengers posted about it. Press inquiries coming in. How do you want to handle?" Zara hadn't considered the public relations aspect. In today's connected world, such incidents rarely remained private. She typed a quick response, "No press statements yet. Let's see how it plays out. Focus on the keynote messaging for now." She closed the PR email and opened her presentation file, but again found her attention wandering. The keynote she had prepared suddenly seemed inadequate, disconnected from the lived reality she had just experienced. Her presentation was about the future of technology, but it said nothing about who would be included in that future, or excluded from it. With sudden clarity, Zara began to revise her speech. The technical content remained, but she added new framing, new context. She would use her platform to address not just what technology could do, but who it would serve and who would create it. She would speak directly to the barriers that still existed for people of color in tech, and how innovation suffered when diverse voices were silenced. Keith approached with meal service. "We'll be landing in San Francisco in about 2 hours, Ms. Washington. Would you like to dine now?" "Yes, thank you," she replied, closing her laptop. "And Keith, I wanted to thank you for your professionalism earlier. It makes a difference." He nodded, his expression serious. "What happened to you was wrong. I've seen it before, too many times. I try to make sure every passenger feels welcome, but the system, well, it doesn't always back us up when we need to intervene. He paused. It was good to see consequences for once. As Keith served her meal, Zara reflected on how many people must witness discrimination daily without having the power or security to address it. Flight attendants, retail workers, service staff, all often caught between company policies and the reality of customer behavior. Zara's phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email notification from Anaya Johnson, NextGen's chief technology officer and Zara's closest friend since college. Just heard about the flight incident from Malcolm. Are you okay? Call me when you land. P.S. Taking bets on how fast Karen Maxwell's law firm throws her under the bus once this gets out. The email made Zara laugh out loud. Anaya always did have a way of cutting through tension with humor. But the message also reminded her of the complex web of privilege and power at play. Karen Maxwell wasn't just any passenger. Her designer clothes and entitled attitude suggested significant socioeconomic privilege. If she worked at a law firm, as Anaya seemed to know, there would likely be professional repercussions once the story spread. For a moment, Zara felt a twinge of concern about the scale of the consequences. Then she remembered Karen's face as she clutched her purse tighter, the casual cruelty of her whispered comments about safety, and the flight attendant's immediate assumption that Zara should be the one to move. These weren't innocent mistakes but manifestations of deep-seated prejudice that had real impacts on real lives every day. As the flight continued westward, Zara made one more call, to her parents. Her father answered on the second ring. Zara. Aren't you supposed to be giving your big speech soon? In a few hours, Dad. I'm on the plane now. Just wanted to hear your voices before I go on stage. She didn't tell them about the incident. They had lived through far worse discrimination in their lives, and she didn't want them to worry. Instead, she listened to her mother talk about the community garden she was helping establish and her father's updates on his retirement activities. We're so proud of you, baby, her mother said before they hung up. You keep changing the world out there. I'm trying, Mom, Zara replied, her throat suddenly tight. I really am. As she ended the call, Zara looked out the window at the vast expanse of clouds below. The incident on the plane was just one small moment in a lifetime of such moments, some more overt, some more subtle, but all part of the same persistent reality. What made today different was not the discrimination itself, but her ability to respond to it effectively. With power came responsibility. Today, she had used that power to create consequences for discrimination. Tomorrow, through her keynote speech and NextGen's ongoing work, she would use it to create change. The plane touched down at San Francisco International Airport 10 minutes ahead of schedule. As Zara gathered her belongings, Keith approached with a discreet message. Ms. Washington, I've been asked to inform you that there are representatives from the airline waiting to escort you through the terminal. Also, it appears there may be some media presence at the gate. Zara nodded, mentally shifting gears. If the story had already attracted media attention, she needed to be strategic about her response. Thank you for letting me know, Keith. As the aircraft door opened, two airline representatives in impeccable suits stood waiting in the jetway. The woman stepped forward immediately. Ms. Washington, I'm Jennifer Alvarez, Senior Vice President of Public Relations. This is Michael Dawson, our Chief Diversity Officer. Mr. Thompson asked us to personally escort you and to extend his deepest apologies again for your experience today. We've arranged a private exit through our premium lounge, Michael added. There are several reporters in the main terminal who somehow got wind of the incident. Zara considered this for a moment. I appreciate the consideration, but I'll exit through the regular terminal. I have nothing to hide. Jennifer and Michael exchanged glances. Of course, Jennifer replied. We'll accompany you, if that's acceptable. As they walked through the terminal, Zara could see a small cluster of people with cameras and microphones near the gate area. News traveled incredibly fast these days, especially when passengers documented incidents on social media. A reporter spotted her and called out, Ms. Washington. Can you comment on the racial discrimination incident on your flight today? Another shouted, is it true you had a passenger removed for refusing to sit next to you? Zara paused, considering her response. Jennifer tensed beside her, clearly anticipating a potential PR crisis. Instead, Zara simply stated, today's incident highlighted that we still have work to do as a society. I'll be addressing some of these issues in my keynote at the Future of Tech conference this afternoon. I hope you'll attend. With that, she continued walking, leaving the reporters with questions but no sensational sound bites. Jennifer's expression reflected both relief and admiration. Ms. Washington, Michael said as they approached the exit, Mr. Thompson wanted me to inform you that Brittany Foster has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We're also implementing immediate refresher training for all customer-facing staff on our anti-discrimination policies. And Karen Maxwell? Zara asked. She has been added to our no-fly list, effective immediately, Jennifer confirmed. We've also issued a formal statement condemning discriminatory behavior on our flights. Zara nodded. That's a start. But systemic problems require systemic solutions. I'd be interested to hear about your longer-term strategies when I meet with Richard. As they reached the curb where a car waited to take Zara to her hotel, her phone buzzed with notifications. Glancing down, she saw that NextGen's stock price had jumped 3 points since market opening, an unusual spike that couldn't be coincidental. Another notification showed an email from Adrian Wong, NextGen's Director of Market Analysis. Boss, incident on the flight making waves. Story picked up by major tech blogs. You're trending on Twitter. Stock up 3%. Conference organizers report surge in registration for your keynote. Investors calling to express support. Whatever you did, the market loves it. The car pulled away from the curb, and Zara allowed herself a moment of reflection. The incident had clearly struck a chord, not just with individuals who had experienced similar discrimination, but with the market itself. Companies were increasingly aware that diversity and inclusion weren't just moral imperatives but business necessities. Standing against discrimination was becoming good business, a development Zara found both encouraging and slightly ironic. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Anaya Johnson. Zara answered immediately. I already heard everything from Malcolm, Anaya said without preamble. Are you okay? I'm fine, Zara assured her. Just preparing mentally for the keynote. Well, prepare for a much bigger audience than you expected. The conference organizers have moved your speech to the main hall and opened additional registration. You've become the must-see event. And Karen Maxwell? Zara asked, curious about Anaya's earlier comment regarding a law firm. Oh, you're going to love this, Anaya replied, her voice laced with satisfaction. She's a partner at Hamilton and Reed. Or should I say, she was. They've already put out a statement, deeply concerned about reports involving one of our partners and promising a thorough investigation. Translation, she's toast. Their client list includes too many diversity-focused tech companies to risk the association. While Zara didn't take pleasure in anyone losing their livelihood, she understood the significance of such consequences. For too long, racial discrimination had been treated as a minor social faux pas rather than the serious ethical breach it was. Real consequences sent a message that such behavior was unacceptable in professional contexts. There's something else, Anaya continued, her tone shifting. Remember that class action lawsuit against Meshworks for systematic discrimination in their promotion practices? Zara did remember. Meshworks was the company where Aisha Robinson, the young developer she'd met on the plane, currently worked. The lead attorney just reached out to us. They want to know if you'd be willing to file an amicus brief. Your experience today, combined with your position in the industry, could add significant weight to their case. Zara considered this carefully. Getting involved in litigation against another tech company had potential business implications. But sometimes leadership meant taking stands that transcended competitive dynamics. Send me the details, she decided. I'll review them after the keynote. As the car pulled up to the hotel, Zara's phone buzzed with yet another notification. It was a social media alert. Someone had posted a video of the incident on the plane. The clip, apparently filmed discreetly by another passenger, showed Karen's refusal to move, Brittany's suggestion that Zara relocate, and Zara's composed response. It had already been viewed over 100,000 times. The comments section was overwhelmingly supportive, with many people sharing their own experiences of discrimination while traveling. Some praised the airline's swift response, others criticized Brittany and Karen in harsh terms. A few questioned whether Zara had overreacted or used her status to bully an airline, predictable backlash that Zara had anticipated. What she hadn't expected was the groundswell of public support, not just for her personally, but for the broader issue of confronting casual racism in everyday interactions. People seemed hungry for examples of accountability, for stories where discrimination faced consequences rather than silent acceptance. As Zara stepped out of the car, the hotel manager greeted her personally. "Ms. Washington, welcome to the Grand Pacific. We've upgraded you to our presidential suite, and the conference organizers have sent over everything you requested for your presentation." "Thank you," Zara replied, accepting the key card. "Also," the manager added, slightly hesitant, "I wanted to say that many of our staff saw the video of what happened on your flight. We just want you to know that you're truly welcome here." The simple statement, "You're truly welcome here," carried more weight than any luxury upgrade. It was the basic dignity that every traveler, every customer, every human being deserved, but that was still too often denied to people of color. In her suite, Zara changed into her presentation outfit, a tailored royal blue suit that projected both authority and authenticity. As she applied her makeup, her phone buzzed one final time before she would need to leave for the conference center. It was an email from Richard Thompson, the airline CEO. "Zara, I cannot apologize enough for what happened today. I've spent the afternoon reviewing our policies and speaking with our board. We are committing $10 million to overhaul our staff training on diversity and inclusion, and we would be honored if NextGen would consider consulting on the development of that program. This isn't just damage control, it's an acknowledgement that we need to do better. I look forward to discussing this further when we meet." Zara read the email twice, noting the concrete commitment rather than just vague promises. It wasn't a solution to systemic racism, but it was a tangible step, a consequence that might help prevent similar incidents for future travelers. As she prepared to leave for her keynote, Zara felt a complex mix of emotions, lingering anger at the discrimination she had faced, satisfaction at the consequences that had followed, and a renewed sense of purpose about the platform she had built and the voice it gave her. Today had been about one incident on one flight. But the ripples from that incident, the corporate responses, the public conversation, the potential legal implications, highlighted how individual stands against discrimination could catalyze broader change. With that thought foremost in her mind, Zara headed for the conference center, ready to address an audience that had suddenly grown much larger and more attentive than anyone had anticipated. The Future of Tech conference bustled with activity as Zara arrived at the San Francisco Convention Center. What would normally have been a standard industry event now hummed with an additional layer of anticipation. Staff members did double takes as she passed, and conversations paused momentarily. The video had clearly made the rounds. Conference Director Melissa Park hurried over as soon as Zara entered the preparation area. "Ms. Washington. I'm so glad you made it. We've had to move your keynote to the main hall, registrations tripled after news of the incident spread." She lowered her voice. "Are you comfortable proceeding as scheduled? We completely understand if you'd prefer to reschedule." "I'm fine, Melissa," Zara assured her. "Actually, I've made some revisions to my presentation. Is the tech team available to load the updated slides?" "Of course. They're waiting for you in the green room." The hour before her keynote passed in a flurry of technical preparations and last-minute adjustments. Zara declined multiple interview requests from tech journalists who had suddenly found her anti-discrimination stance more newsworthy than her company's innovations. After the keynote, she told her PR director, who was fielding the requests. "Let them hear what I have to say first." At precisely 3 p.m., Zara took the stage to thunderous applause. The main hall, designed to seat 2,000 people, was filled to capacity. Faces of every color and background looked back at her, a diversity not always present at tech conferences. "Thank you," she began, waiting for the applause to subside. "I was scheduled to talk to you today about NextGen's latest security protocols and our vision for ethical AI development. We'll still cover that." She paused. "But first, I want to address something more fundamental: who gets to create the future of technology, and who that future will serve." A hushed anticipation fell over the audience. "Many of you have seen the video of what happened on my flight this morning," Zara continued. "A fellow passenger refused to sit next to me because of my race. An airline employee suggested that I should be the one to move, despite having a confirmed first-class ticket for my assigned seat." She took a sip of water, her composure absolute. "I'm sharing this not to rehash the incident, but because it illustrates a critical point: technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's created by people who carry their biases, assumptions, and privileges into the products they design. And those products then either reinforce existing inequities or help dismantle them. There is no neutral option." The slides behind her shifted to show statistics on diversity in tech, numbers that hadn't improved significantly in over a decade. When we talk about the future of technology, we can't separate the what from the who. Who is at the table when decisions are made? Whose experiences inform design choices? Whose problems are deemed worthy of solving? For the next 15 minutes, Zara wove together her personal experience with broader industry trends, connecting individual acts of discrimination to systemic patterns that influenced everything from hiring practices to product development. She spoke about facial recognition systems that failed to accurately identify darker skin tones, healthcare algorithms that allocated fewer resources to Black patients, and hiring AIs that perpetuated existing workforce imbalances. "These aren't just ethical issues, they're business failures," she emphasized. "Technology that doesn't work for everyone simply doesn't work. Period." Then, with the audience fully engaged, she transitioned to the announcement she had originally planned. "That's why I'm proud to announce today that NextGen is launching a new initiative, the Equity in AI Protocol, an open-source system that can detect and report discrimination in customer service interactions across digital platforms." Excited murmurs rippled through the audience. This tool uses natural language processing to identify patterns of differential treatment based on perceived identity markers, race, gender, disability status, and more. It flags potentially discriminatory interactions for human review and generates anonymized reports that allow companies to address systemic issues rather than just individual incidents. The screens displayed a simplified diagram of the system architecture. "And I'm pleased to share that our first major implementation partner will be the airline I flew today." Zara allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes, transformative partnerships emerge from unexpected places. The audience erupted in applause and laughter. For the remainder of her keynote, Zara detailed the technical specifications of both the Equity in AI Protocol and NextGen's core security offerings. She fielded questions with precision and depth, demonstrating that while the morning's incident had been significant, it hadn't distracted from her technical expertise or business focus. As she concluded, she returned to her opening theme. "The most powerful technology is that which expands human potential, not just for some, but for all. At NextGen, we're committed to building tools that recognize, respect, and respond to the full diversity of human experience. Because a future that isn't for everyone isn't a future worth building." The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes. As Zara left the stage, she was immediately surrounded by conference attendees, some wanting to share their own experiences of discrimination, others eager to discuss potential applications of the Equity in AI Protocol. Several major tech CEOs had sent representatives to request meetings. Amid the crowd, Zara spotted a familiar face, Aisha Robinson, the young developer she had met on the plane. That was incredible, Aisha said when she finally reached Zara. Especially the part about technology either reinforcing inequities or helping dismantle them. I've been trying to explain that concept to my team for months. It's easier to explain when you have a platform, Zara acknowledged. That's why building your career matters, so you can eventually change the conversation. About that, Aisha replied, a hint of nervousness in her voice. I've been thinking about your offer. Is NextGen really hiring? Zara smiled. Come by our booth tomorrow. Ask for Anaya Johnson, our CTO. Tell her I sent you. As the afternoon progressed, Zara participated in panel discussions, met with potential investors, and conducted a few carefully selected media interviews. The incident on the plane came up in every conversation, but Zara consistently redirected to the broader implications rather than the personal details. By evening, NextGen stock had climbed an additional 4 points, bringing the day's total gain to 7%. The company's social media accounts had gained thousands of new followers, and the conference app showed her booth scheduled to maximum capacity for the following day. As she prepared to leave the convention center, Zara received a text from Richard Thompson, just watched your keynote. Powerful message. Our executive team is unanimously behind the equity in AI implementation. Contract revisions being sent to your legal team tonight. This is just the beginning of meaningful change. The commercial impact of taking a stand against discrimination had been immediate and overwhelmingly positive, an outcome that would hopefully encourage other companies to follow suit. But as Zara stepped into the car waiting to take her back to the hotel, she reflected that the true measure of success wouldn't be today's stock jump or media attention. It would be the next time a black passenger boarded a flight and was treated with the same respect and dignity automatically afforded to others. It would be in the accumulated small moments where bias was interrupted, where assumptions were questioned, where the default settings of inequality were gradually reset. Those changes would be slower, harder to measure, and less headline-worthy. But they were the ones that would ultimately matter most. 6 months later, Zara found herself once again at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, preparing to board a flight to Los Angeles for a major technology summit. So much had changed in the half-year since her confrontation with Karen Maxwell had gone viral. NextGen's equity in AI protocol had been implemented across 3 major airlines, including the one where the incident had occurred. Early data showed promising results. Reported discrimination incidents had decreased by 40%, while customer satisfaction scores among minority passengers had improved significantly. The system wasn't perfect, AI never was, but it provided a level of accountability and data collection that hadn't previously existed. As Zara approached the security checkpoint, she noticed subtle differences in how TSA agents interacted with passengers of color, more consistent eye contact, fewer, random, additional screenings. The airline had partnered with the airport authority to expand their training programs beyond their own staff, creating a more comprehensive approach to addressing discrimination in travel. "Good morning, Ms. Washington," greeted the TSA agent, checking her ID with professional courtesy. "Have a good flight." At the gate, Zara was surprised to see a familiar face, Brittany, the flight attendant who had suggested she move to accommodate Karen's racism 6 months earlier. Brittany was no longer in a flight attendant uniform but instead wore the business casual attire of the airline's ground staff. She was checking boarding passes with meticulous care, her expression professional but subdued. When Zara approached, Brittany looked up and immediately recognized her. A flush spread across her face, but to her credit, she didn't look away or pretend not to recognize Zara. "Ms. Washington," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Zara nodded, stepping slightly to the side to allow other passengers to continue boarding. "I wanted to apologize to you in person," Brittany said, keeping her voice low. "My handling of the situation 6 months ago was completely inappropriate. There's no excuse for it." "What happened after that day?" Zara asked, genuinely curious about the impact on Brittany's career. "I was suspended, then reassigned to customer service after completing sensitivity training," Brittany explained. "At first, I was angry. I felt like I was being punished for trying to solve a problem quickly. But the training, it made me see how many assumptions I was making without even realizing it. Zara studied the young woman's face, seeing sincerity in her expression. We all have biases, Brittany. The question is whether we're willing to recognize and address them. I'm trying, Brittany replied. The airline has completely overhauled our training. New hires now go through a much more comprehensive program on recognizing and responding to discrimination. Existing staff have mandatory quarterly refreshers. She hesitated. Your AI system flags interactions for review, and we discuss real examples in our training sessions. Zara nodded, pleased that the changes went beyond superficial corporate statements. And do you find it's making a difference? It is, Brittany confirmed. Not just in how we treat passengers, but in how we support each other when we witness discrimination. Before, many of us would stay silent, not wanting to cause a scene. Now, we're explicitly authorized to intervene. She lowered her voice. 2 weeks ago, one of our first-class passengers made derogatory comments about a Muslim family in economy. Our purser immediately addressed it, told him that language wasn't acceptable on our flights. That wouldn't have happened 6 months ago. Small steps, Zara acknowledged, but important ones. Your boarding pass is all set, Ms. Washington, Brittany said, returning to her professional role. Thank you for your time, and for accepting my apology. As Zara walked down the jetway, she reflected on the interaction. Brittany's apology had seemed genuine, her growth real. The incident had been a catalyst for her personal development as well as broader corporate change, exactly the kind of dual-track progress needed to address systemic discrimination. Boarding the plane, Zara was greeted by a diverse flight crew who recognized her immediately but treated her with the same professional courtesy they showed all first-class passengers, no excess deference, no uncomfortable scrutiny, just respectful service. As she settled into her seat, Zara opened her laptop to review presentation materials for the upcoming summit. NextGen had expanded dramatically in the past 6 months, with the equity in AI protocol generating unexpected new revenue streams alongside their core security business. They had hired 27 new developers, including Aisha Robinson, who was now leading a team focused on extending the protocol to retail environments. The law firm where Karen Maxwell had been a partner had indeed parted ways with her, citing behavior inconsistent with our values in a carefully worded press release. Karen had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit that was quickly dismissed, then faded from public view. Zara didn't take pleasure in another woman's downfall, but she did appreciate the message it sent. There were now real professional consequences for overt discrimination. More meaningfully, the class action lawsuit against Meshworks had been settled for a substantial sum, with the company agreeing to overhaul its promotion practices and implement regular diversity audits. Zara's amicus brief, detailing how subtle discrimination accumulated over time to create significant career barriers, had been cited repeatedly in the judge's ruling. A notification popped up on Zara's laptop, a message from Malcolm with the latest statistics from the Equity in AI implementation. Reported discrimination incidents were continuing to decrease across participating airlines, while intervention rates by staff had increased. The system was working as designed, creating accountability where previously there had been only individual discretion. Excuse me, Ms. Washington. Zara looked up to see a flight attendant she didn't recognize. The captain asked me to give you this. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Ms. Washington, I want to thank you for your partnership in implementing the equity protocol. The data speaks for itself, but the true impact is in the changed atmosphere on our flights, for our passengers and our crew. You turned what could have been just another incident into meaningful change. We're grateful for your leadership. Captain Wilson. Zara tucked the note into her briefcase, unexpectedly moved by the gesture. Captain Wilson had been the pilot on that fateful flight 6 months ago, the one who had recognized her and made the initial calls that set everything in motion. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Zara gazed out the window at the Atlanta skyline, the city where she had grown up, where her parents had sacrificed so much to give her opportunities, where she had first learned that the world wasn't fair but could still be changed. Her phone buzzed with one final message before she would need to switch to airplane mode. It was from her mother. "Just saw your company featured on the morning news. So proud of you, baby. You're changing things, just like we always knew you would." Zara smiled, putting her phone away as the plane accelerated down the runway. The incident 6 months ago had been painful, humiliating, and infuriating, all the emotions that came with experiencing discrimination. But she had channeled that pain into power, that humiliation into determination, that fury into focused action. One flight, one confrontation, one refusal to accept the status quo had cascaded into industry-wide changes. It wasn't enough, would never be enough until every person could move through the world with the same dignity and respect regardless of their skin color. But it was progress. Measurable, meaningful progress. As the plane lifted into the sky, Zara opened her laptop again, navigating to a document she had been working on for weeks: Beyond Detection, Next-Generation Tools for Equity in Digital Spaces. The next phase of her work was already taking shape, not just identifying discrimination but actively preventing it through thoughtfully designed systems and interfaces. There would always be more work to do. More barriers to break, more systems to reimagine, more minds to change. But today, as she flew toward her next opportunity to drive change, Zara Washington felt something that had been rare in her journey: the satisfaction of seeing real progress, of knowing that her stand had mattered, of witnessing the beginning of lasting change. Zara's story teaches us that confronting discrimination requires both courage and strategy. When facing prejudice, we have choices beyond silent acceptance or explosive confrontation. By leveraging whatever power we have, whether personal, professional, or institutional, we can create meaningful consequences that ripple beyond individual incidents. The most important lesson is that systemic change happens through individual actions. Had Zara simply accepted the situation, no policy would have changed, no training would have improved, and countless future passengers would have faced similar treatment. Her composed resistance transformed a painful moment into lasting progress. Additionally, this story reminds us that privilege comes with responsibility. Zara used her position not just for personal vindication but to create pathways for others. She recognized that her victory would be hollow if it didn't open doors for those without her platform. Finally, we learn that accountability matters. For too long, discrimination has carried no real consequences. When companies, institutions, and individuals face tangible repercussions for enabling or engaging in racist behavior, the incentives shift, and change becomes possible. Holding firm boundaries may feel uncomfortable, but it's often the catalyst needed for genuine transformation. Has there been a moment in your life where you witnessed discrimination and wished you'd spoken up? Or perhaps a time when you did take a stand? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If Zara's journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories about overcoming injustice and creating change. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with how to respond to discrimination in their own life. What would you have done in Zara's position? How do you think companies should handle incidents like these? Drop a 1 in the comments if you believe more businesses need clear anti-discrimination policies with real consequences. Thank you for watching and being part of this important conversation. Remember, every time we choose dignity over comfort, justice over convenience, we help build the world we wish to see. Until next time, keep standing tall and speaking truth.